During the 1936 Berlin Olympics, American athlete Jesse Owens was getting ready for his third jump in the long jump event qualifying round. He had already fouled 2 attempts, and if he were to foul one more, he would have been disqualified. His rival, German Louis Long, stopped by and advised him to start his jump a little before the start line. Jesse Owens followed the advice and qualified. He went on to win the gold at the event, while Long took the silver. This incident sparked a new friendship between the two athletes, leading to Owens being the best man at the wedding of Louis Long's son, Carl. Hi, you're listening to The Why in History. I am Ajay Kaul, and today we take a look at some intense rivalries from history, some of which had a positive impact and some that had a negative impact on history. While at the 1936 Berlin Olympics, Jesse Owens became the brand ambassador for the shoes that he wore during his events. The shoes, which were manufactured by the German company, the Dassler Shoe Company. The Dassler Shoe Company made spiked shoes which had helped many German athletes win gold medals at previous games. And by the 1936 Berlin Olympics, the Dassler Shoe Company was a household name in Germany. And after American Jesse Owens won 4 gold medals wearing those shoes, the Dassler Shoe Company achieved global fame as well. Adi and Rudolf Dassler were 2 brothers running this company. And Jesse Owens, being their brand ambassador, not only spiked their shoe sales, but also helped them during World War II. When American soldiers landed in Germany, they recognized the Dassler brothers as Jesse Owens' shoe providers and let their factory continue to function during the war. As the war moved on, Adi was drafted in 1940, but was soon given leave as his presence in the Dassler Shoe Company was deemed necessary. Rudolf, on the other hand, was drafted in 1943, and he got upset at his brother, blaming him for getting him drafted so that he could control the entire business. Rudolf tried to escape the draft, but was imprisoned and spent the rest of the war imprisoned while Adi controlled the business. After the war, as part of the denazification process in Germany, Rudolf was identified as a Nazi supporter, and his brother Adi testified that Rudolf indeed was a Nazi sympathizer. This incident was the last straw in the deteriorating relationship between the 2 brothers, and in 1948, the Dassler brothers decided to divide the company and all its assets and employees between each other. And this would be the last time the Dassler brothers would speak to one another. Adi retained the Dassler shoe factory and 2/3 of the employees, and he named his new company after the first 3 letters of his first and last name. That is, Adidas. Rudolf moved south of the Orach River and built a new shoe factory, and the company was named Ruda after himself. But the name didn't sound too appealing, so it was finally changed to Puma to sound more athletic. So the 2 companies arising after the split between the 2 brothers were Adidas and Puma. The German town of Herzogenhauer, where these 2 factories were located, came to be known as the town of bent necks, because everyone first checked to see which shoes you were wearing. Almost everyone in the town worked for one of these 2 companies, but the rivalry was so fierce that even dating or marrying across company lines was prohibited. But this intense rivalry brought a lot of innovation into the sportswear industry, and both companies ended up bringing the best sports equipment to the market. The rivalry would continue several decades after the deaths of the Dassler brothers. It finally ended in 2009 when Adidas and Puma participated in a friendly soccer match to signify that the animosity between the 2 companies was officially gone. In the 1980s, Two American companies went head to head against each other in a fierce rivalry. You guessed it right. These were Coca-Cola and Pepsi. Several decades after their inception, Coke emerged as the more popular soda. Its famous Santa Claus ads in 1931 marketed it as a refreshing drink you could have year-round. Pepsi-Cola, meanwhile, struggled financially and went through several reorganizations. In 1965, it merged with Frito-Lay Inc. to become PepsiCo Inc. But in 1975, Pepsi started a marketing campaign that gave Coke a run for its money. The Pepsi Challenge, a blind taste test showing that more people preferred Pepsi over Coke. And that was true. Internal studies at Coca-Cola confirmed what the Pepsi Challenge was showing, that purely based on taste, consumers preferred Pepsi, which had a sweeter, more syrupy flavor. And all of a sudden, Pepsi's market share started rising. Consumers seemed to be in love with the notion of Coca-Cola, but they weren't necessarily drinking it. In response, Coca-Cola started making a few changes. In 1982, it released its first drink to share Coke's name, Diet Coke. The next year, it released a caffeine-free version of Coke and Diet Coke and switched to corn syrup instead of sugar to reduce the cost of production. And on April 23, 1985, Coca-Cola announced that it was changing the secret formula for its drink. The new Coke, as it became known, would have a sweeter taste similar to Pepsi's that the consumers preferred in the blind taste test. The consumers were outraged that they couldn't buy the original Coke anymore. Pepsi gladly capitalized on this with a new ad that declared Pepsi the choice of a new generation. But surprisingly, instead of switching to Pepsi, the Coca-Cola consumers started organizing, and grassroots organizations like the Old Cola Drinkers of America sprung up around the country to petition the company to change the recipe back. And it worked. On July 11, 1985, less than 3 months after the formula change announcement, Coca-Cola announced that it would bring back the old formula under the brand name Coca-Cola Classic. But the company continued to sell the new Coke and in 1992 rebranded it as Coke 2. But Coke 2 never took off, and Coca-Cola discontinued it in 2002. Ironically, the new formula debacle was a financial success for Coca-Cola. All of a sudden, people actually wanted to taste that beverage again. And in 2010, for the first time, both Coke and Diet Coke surpassed Pepsi's sales. The Wall Street Journal ran a headline declaring Diet Coke the winner in the Cola Wars. But the Cola Wars continue unabated even today, even though the high point definitely was the 1980s. The old adage that history is written by victors definitely applies to the electricity wars fought in the late 19th and the early 20th century. I'm talking about the battle between Thomas Edison and Nikola Tesla. Born in 1847, Edison was part of a new wave of scientists from the Second Industrial Revolution that ushered in the modern era in the United States. His famed research lab in Menlo Park, New Jersey, was privy to several innovations of that era, which included the phonograph, motion pictures, and the light bulb. Incidentally, Edison was just homeschooled, and because of all his success, he had a great sense of his own greatness. He had a huge ego, which made him incredibly competitive, and he ensured that his idea ultimately won. Nikola Tesla, on the other hand, was sort of formally educated and was a different kind of genius. Born in Serbia, Tesla attended the Imperial Royal Technical College in Graz, Austria between 1875 and 1878, where he initially excelled but dropped out during his third year due to gambling issues, loss of scholarship, and disputes with his professors. And just for the record, he was studying mechanical engineering in Austria because electrical engineering as a discipline at that time did not exist. In 1882, at the age of 26, Tesla started working for the Continental Edison Company in Paris. He was initially employed as a technician, but his engineering and physics expertise showed. So he was promoted to an engineering position to design and build improved versions of generators and motors. In June of 1884, Tesla emigrated to the United States on the recommendation of the branch manager of the Paris branch to work for Thomas Edison in New York. Now, at that time, electricity was primarily being generated by direct current. In 1882, Edison's company opened the world's first central power station on Pearl Street in Manhattan, which delivered 110 volts of electricity to nearby buildings using direct current. At a basic level, direct current flows in one direction only with constant polarity and is common in batteries and electronics. Alternating current, or AC, periodically reverses direction and changes magnitude, but it is efficient for long-distance transmission, whereas DC is ideal for energy storage. But because of DC's limitation with respect to transmission, several power stations had to be built to electrify neighboring communities. And Nikola Tesla believed that alternating current would be the solution for transmitting electricity at scale. It was while working for Edison that Tesla presented to him that AC would be a better alternative for distributing power at scale. But Edison refused. Why? Partly ego, partly the massive investments he had already made in the DC technology. Investments which were financially backed by his banker, J.P. Morgan. Instead, Edison promised Tesla a $50,000 award if he improved the DC system. And Tesla actually did. But Edison refused to pay him, stating that he was just joking and the Serbian needed to understand American humor better. Tesla was upset, parted ways with Edison, and it was here that the rivalry took off. After leaving Edison's company, Tesla dug trenches on the side for underground electric cables to pay the bills. But he was very focused on building an alternating current induction motor. Tesla patented his invention in 1887, and that became the foundational technology for modern electrical systems. Overall, Tesla owned 7 separate patents on this invention. And who did he license these patents to? George Westinghouse, Edison's chief rival, who ran the Westinghouse Electrical Corporation. And as expected, alternating current started gaining prominence, and Thomas Edison spared no effort to discredit AC. Edison had his team pick up dogs, calves, and even a circus elephant and electrocute them to prove the deadly nature of AC. New York State at the time was looking for a more humane alternative to hanging its death penalty prisoners. And Edison seized this opportunity and recommended AC-powered electrocution as the fastest, deadliest option. In 1890, convicted murderer William Kemmler became the first person to die in an electric chair, which was designed by a technician on Edison's payroll and powered by a Westinghouse AC generator. But slowly, the board of Edison's electric company realized that he was coming in the way of them making money on AC. So in 1892, Edison's electric company was merged with a couple more companies to form General Electric. In 1893, alternating current won its first major battle when Westinghouse won the contract to supply electricity to the World's Fair in Chicago, beating out General Electric. Westinghouse also beat out General Electric to win a contract to construct AC generators for a hydroelectric power plant at Niagara Falls. In 1896, the plant started delivering electricity all the way to Buffalo, New York, 26 miles away. And it was this achievement that was regarded as the unofficial end to the war of currents. At this point, AC became dominant in the electric power industry. But at the time when Westinghouse won these major contracts, it was on the verge of bankruptcy. And what prevented them? Tesla forgave $12 million in royalties so Westinghouse could stay afloat and complete these contracts. But by then, Tesla had earned a lot of money via royalties. So why did he die penniless? The answer, the Wardenclyffe Tower Project. Between 1901 and 1906, Tesla attempted to build a 187-foot wireless transmission station in Shoreham, New York. The aim was to use the Earth's resonance to transmit electric energy through the ground and atmosphere, acting as a giant Wi-Fi for power. This project was partly funded by Tesla and partly by JP Morgan. But as the costs rose phenomenally without much success, the project was abandoned in 1906, and the tower, also known as Tesla Tower, was demolished for scrap in 1917. If we were to look at rivalries at the national level, then one rivalry that stands out is England versus Scotland. Though the two neighbors had clashed before, the England-Scotland rivalry became official in the year 1292. After Scottish King Alexander III died without an heir, Scottish nobles asked Edward I of England to arbitrate the succession. In 1292, Edward I selected John Balliol to be the new King of Scotland, but demanded recognition as Lord Paramount of Scotland, and he started treating Scotland as a vassal state. The Scots were upset and formed an alliance with France in 1295 called the Auld Alliance. Edward I of England was not happy with this development and launched an invasion of Scotland in 1296. He defeated the Scots at Dunbar, stripped John Balliol of his royal title, and took the Stone of Destiny to London. The Stone of Destiny, or Stone of Scone, was a 336-pound red sandstone block which were used for centuries in the coronation of Scottish monarchs. And by taking the stone away as a spoil of war, Edward I essentially took away a symbol of Scottish history. This led to the uprising of William Wallace, who defeated the English forces at the Battle of Stirling Bridge and ruled Scotland as guardian of the realm until 1305. He was ultimately captured by the English and executed for treason. His story has been captured in the Hollywood movie Braveheart, starring Mel Gibson as William Wallace. The Scots, though, were able to regain their independence in 1314 when Robert the Bruce defeated the English King Edward II at the Battle of Bannockburn. Due to turmoil within England's monarchy at that time, the formal recognition of Scottish independence by England had to wait another 14 years when English King Edward III signed the Treaty of Northampton in 1328. Interestingly, under this treaty, the English agreed to return the Stone of Destiny, but the English rioted and prevented the removal of the stone at that time. There was relative peace for about 2 centuries between the two nations after the signing of the Treaty of Northampton. A turning moment in history between the two countries happened in 1603 when Elizabeth I died without an heir, and Scottish King James VI inherited the British throne, resulting in the two countries coming together under one monarch. But despite this, the Scots maintained a separate identity, and animosity between the two nations continued. And then in the year 1707, the English and the Scottish parliaments passed the Acts of Union, which formally united England and Scotland under the Kingdom of Great Britain. Wait, Scotland agreed to this? Why? Two primary reasons. One, Scotland had essentially turned Protestant during this time, and they preferred a Protestant English monarch to a Catholic Scottish monarch. And second, the more important reason, Scotland had tried to boost its economy by following the English colonial model and started by trying to colonize Panama. But that had ended in a financial disaster, and Scotland desperately needed to be bailed out financially, and unifying under Great Britain was the only choice. But the rivalry continued, and in 1872, leaders across the two nations found a less bloody way for the two countries to fight each other. The first official international soccer match was played between England and Scotland at Glasgow and ended in a 0-0 tie. In 1997, a referendum led to the creation of the Scottish Parliament in 1999. The differences, though, still exist, and this was very clear in the 2016 Brexit vote, where the Scots overwhelmingly voted to stay in the Union, whereas the United Kingdom overall voted to leave. And the calls for Scottish independence continue to this day. Meanwhile, the Stone of Destiny was officially returned to Scotland on November the 30th, 1996, 700 years after it was first taken away. And on that note, we end this section of the program. On to the quiz section. Question from the previous episode. Who are Venezuela's top trading partners? The United States, India, and China combined contribute to approximately 75% of Venezuelan trade. So the answer is C, US, China, and India. Question for the current episode. Which Shakespearean character was among the earliest kings of Scotland? Was it A, Macbeth, B, King Lear, C, Edward III, or D, Richard III? Once again, which Shakespearean character was among the earliest kings of Scotland? Was it A, Macbeth, B, King Lear, C, Edward III, or D, Richard III? The answer will be provided in the next episode. And it is here that we end today's episode. Hope you enjoyed it, and will tune in again in 2 weeks for another interesting and exciting episode on world history. Till then, stay safe and keep exploring the why in history.